The promotion is going to someone with a fresh perspective, my boss said, smiling. Across the table, his niece raised her glass, toasting the decision. I sat there holding a half-full water glass and nodded like I understood what was happening. But I didn't. Not yet. Then Richard leaned forward and said it with that CEO smile I used to think was charming. It's nothing personal, just business. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't a promotion lunch. It was a firing. And the girl replacing me? She was sitting right across from me, sipping champagne I hadn't even touched. Let me rewind. My name is Emily Harper. I'm 32, a proud Midwesterner, and until 3 weeks ago, I was senior operations manager at Midpoint Strategies, a boutique consulting firm just outside Chicago. We weren't Google, but we weren't nobody either. We handled accounts for 3 major logistics companies and 2 regional banks. I handled them. The funny thing about being competent is that people stop noticing. You put out fires, they forget there was a fire to begin with. You save a sinking project, and they talk about how well it went, never who kept it from sinking. I wasn't flashy. I didn't play politics. I wasn't loud in meetings. But when revenue targets were met, client renewals hit record highs, or new contracts quietly closed in Q3, that was me, behind the curtain, doing what had to be done. My boss, Richard Carlson, once called me the engine of the company. I didn't know engines could be traded in without warning. The first signs were subtle. A few weeks before the lunch, I noticed I wasn't being CC'd on strategy emails anymore. Not all, just the important ones, the ones that usually had subject lines like Investor Roundtable or Q4 Realignment. At first, I figured someone forgot to add me. Or maybe my name got dropped off in a reply thread. But then it happened again. And again. Around the same time, Madeline, the niece, started appearing more. In meetings, on emails, shadowing phone calls. Always smiling, always nodding. She'd only been with us 6 months. She was introduced as a strategic hire, which everyone knew meant nepotism with a PowerPoint. No experience. No credentials. But she had shiny business cards and those heels that clicked too loud in hallways. You know the type. Still, I answered her questions. I helped her understand how our CRM system worked. I even took the time to explain why one of our biggest clients always panicked mid-quarter. I figured she was green and trying. But deep down, I think I already knew. 2 days before the lunch, I was in the office late, 8:15 p.m., fluorescent lights buzzing, everyone else long gone. I was finalizing a multi-phase plan for a shipping client that Richard had completely forgotten about. If I didn't turn it in, he'd be caught flat-footed in a review the next morning. Madeline stopped by my desk. She had a USB in her hand and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Richard asked me to upload the Q2 transition docs to the shared drive, she said. He figured you were swamped. Sure, I said, handing her the folder. She lingered. Oh, and congrats by the way. I paused. On what? She blinked, too quickly. Oh, maybe I misunderstood. Forget it. Then she turned and walked off like she hadn't just dropped a smoke bomb in the middle of my night. I sat there staring at my screen, her words looping in my head. The lunch invite came the next morning. Subject line, promotion lunch bottle with popping cork, let's talk future. The emoji should have been my first clue. Richard never used emojis. But I let myself believe. I put on my navy blazer, the one I saved for performance reviews, and even curled my hair. I told myself it was time. I'd earned this. After 8 years of hard work, it was finally happening. The restaurant was sleek. Crisp white tablecloths, quiet music, soft lighting. The kind of place where people close deals, not bury careers. We sat, ordered, smiled. Richard talked about his Labrador for 10 minutes. Madeline offered a story about some art gallery she visited last weekend. I nodded, laughed where appropriate. I kept waiting for the good part, the "we want you to take on more leadership" part. Instead, Richard folded his hands and said, "So, Emily, we've been doing some restructuring." My stomach tensed, just slightly. Restructuring? It's not bad news, not for the company. We're just moving toward a leaner, more innovative model. And part of that means bringing in some fresh energy. He glanced at Madeline, then back at me. We've decided to sunset your position. Of course, there's a generous severance and letter of recommendation. We can give you time to recalibrate. I was still holding my glass of water. My mouth was dry, but my hands were steady. And the role is going to Madeline? I asked. He nodded, like it was no big deal. She'll be handling the key accounts with mentorship. We think she'll bring a different tone. I didn't speak. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to waste breath. Emily, he said gently, it's nothing personal. The words clicked in my head like a bad lock. Of course it wasn't personal. That's what people say when they want to hurt you without taking responsibility. When they want to push you off the cliff, but say it was gravity's fault. I walked out of the restaurant without crying. That surprised even me. But what Richard didn't know, what Madeline didn't even have the experience to ask about, was that for the past 2 years, I had built every single internal framework that kept our company from falling apart. I had the original strategy memos, the draft emails, the timelines, the policy changes I wrote but Richard presented. They didn't just fire the engine. They handed the keys to someone who didn't know how to drive. 2 days later, I came in to clear out my office. My nameplate was gone. Madeline was sitting at my desk like she'd always belonged there. "Oh," she said, startled. "I didn't think you'd come in today. I just wanted to collect a few things." She smiled like it was nothing. "You left behind some client files." I forwarded them to myself to keep the transitions clean. "Hope that's okay." I smiled back. "Of course. Anything to help." I picked up the mug I brought from home years ago. The one with the faded "not today" chaos on the side. On my way out, I passed the break room. Ben from HR was whispering to someone. She took it better than I thought. Then laughter. "You don't get too comfortable around here," someone else said. Madeline's voice floated softly after. "It's just the way business works." As I stepped into the elevator, I pulled out my phone. Scrolled to a folder I'd been updating for months, quietly, carefully, without telling anyone. Inside it were emails. Documents. Signed approvals with my edits in red. They thought they were cutting off dead weight. What they didn't know was I was the one carrying the load. And now that I'd gone quiet, they'd finally feel the difference. I didn't attend the quarterly dinner. But I saw the photos anyway, Richard with his arm draped around Madeline, both holding flutes of champagne in front of the Midpoint Strategies logo. Madeline's caption read, "A bright new chapter begins. Cheers to leadership that's ready for the future." I stared at it for a long moment. Then I closed my laptop. No comment. No like. Just silence. Let them think I was gone. The first week after the firing, I did exactly what they expected. Or at least, that's what it looked like. I shut down my LinkedIn. I moved out of my apartment to a smaller place across town, no forwarding address. I stopped answering texts from colleagues who wanted the real story. Even my mom thought I'd had a breakdown. But it wasn't a breakdown. It was a repositioning. When you've been the engine of a company for years, you don't slam on the brakes. You downshift. Quietly. Some nights, I'd wake up and wonder if I was wasting my time. If they were right to replace me. But the feeling never lasted long. Not once I remembered who built that place. Madeline, meanwhile, was thriving on the surface. Her face was suddenly on every internal newsletter. She was signing off on reports I'd written. They even renamed my rolling triage process the MC method. Like she'd conjured it from thin air. I caught a clip from a panel discussion she'd spoken at. She was sitting on stage next to a major client of ours, a logistics VP who had been my contact for 2 years. Madeline smiled, tilting her head just so, and said, "When I designed the MC method, my goal was to." The VP's expression didn't shift, but his eyes flicked sideways, like he knew exactly whose method it was. I almost laughed. Almost. From the outside, I looked like I was drifting. But in reality, I was moving. Before my company email shut down, I had archived everything. Not the polished reports, the real ones. The unedited memos. The client correspondence. The redlined contracts with my initials in the margins. All of it, zipped and encrypted, sitting quietly in my private drive. I also set up job alerts, but not for employment. For midpoint strategies. Every new hire, every procurement, every press release. I wanted to see where the cracks would appear. Because cracks always appear when people take credit for things they don't understand. I started reappearing in small, unexpected places. Not loudly. Not often. A networking brunch for the Chicago Business Leadership Circle. A low-key seminar on supply chain ethics at the university downtown. Always as someone's guest. Never on the roster. At the brunch, I wore all black, no name tag, hair pulled back. Richard walked past me twice before realizing who I was. "Emily," he said finally, sounding like someone had just whispered my name in his ear. I turned, mildly surprised. "Oh. Richard. Hello." He blinked. "You're here?" "I was invited," I said simply. "You remember Nadia?" He looked over at my friend, who was deep in conversation with a tech investor. Madeline appeared then, perfectly lip-glossed, holding a mimosa. She saw me and blinked. "Oh. You look different." "I guess I am." She gave a tight little laugh, then glanced at Richard like she needed him to rescue her from the moment. "Well," Richard said, tugging at his tie, "I hope everything's going well for you." "It is." And then I turned away mid-sentence, mid-smile. Not rudely. Just enough to make them wonder if I knew something. Because I did. I filled my days with a different kind of work. Running early mornings in the park. Journaling again, not about my feelings, but about a plan. Coffee meetings with old contacts who owed me favors or remembered my competence. One afternoon, I met with a junior analyst I once mentored. He now worked at a regulatory agency that oversaw contracts like midpoints. We talked about industry trends over matcha lattes. I asked questions. I listened. I smiled. I left behind nothing but a thank you note and the faint sense that I was still relevant. Later, I bumped into my old assistant Jordan at a bookstore near Lincoln Park. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Emily?" I smiled. "Hey, Jordan." He lowered his voice. "Is this real? Are you okay?" "I'm good," I said gently. "How's the office?" He hesitated. "It's weird." "How's Madeline?" He glanced around. "She doesn't know what she's doing. But no one says anything. Richard keeps covering for her. And she's pushing through something big, a vendor platform you specifically flagged for compliance. People are nervous." I didn't ask for details. I just tucked that information away. As I was leaving, he said something that stuck with me. "People think you've moved on." I turned back. They're not entirely wrong. And then I smiled. Not the way I used to be polite. But the kind that means something's coming. His assistant sent me an email by mistake. Subject line, need sign off on MC platform ASAP, client getting pushy. It was supposed to go to Madeline. But it landed in my inbox, the personal one I'd set up with an old domain, one the assistant didn't realize I still monitored. The email thread was longer than it should have been. And uglier. Near the bottom, I saw a message from Madeline herself. Let's just push this through. Emily was always paranoid about vendors. She's gone now. And she's not coming back. LOL. 3 lies in one sentence. They were about to roll out a platform I had flagged for multiple compliance violations. Not just risky, illegal. And they were doing it under my system's name. The MC method. And now they were laughing about it. It had been 6 weeks since I was forced out of Midpoint Strategies. To the outside world, I looked like I'd disappeared, no job, no LinkedIn updates, no angry posts. But in reality, I was quietly building something stronger than outrage. Evidence. I already had most of it. But now, with this email chain, I had a direct link between the decision to bypass compliance and Madeline's signature. That wasn't arrogance. That was negligence. And if the client went live with that system, it wouldn't just burn their trust. It would scorch the whole company. I started connecting dots faster now. Spent entire nights mapping timelines. Matching file edits to project launches. Tracking down memos I'd authored that had been plagiarized and passed off as collaborative documents. Then I noticed something I hadn't seen before. One of the PDF manuals Madeline had introduced during a client onboarding session was, line for line, a guide I'd written 6 months earlier. She hadn't even bothered to change the file name. Emily_H_triage notes_final. PDF, right there in the properties. They were sloppy. Sloppy and overconfident. The most dangerous combination. I needed outside eyes. So I contacted Alan Liu, a former compliance consultant we used during vendor negotiations. He respected clean documentation, and more importantly, he remembered how careful I was with red flags. We met at a diner near Oak Street Beach. Low-key. No chance of running into anyone from Midpoint. I showed him the platform specs, the signed contracts, the compliance flags. He frowned. This platform again? You pulled this. I did. They still have open privacy issues with Illinois regulators. I know. Alan looked up from the printout. Are they actually rolling this out to clients? Next week. He leaned back in his booth. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen. I didn't have to ask him for anything. I just slid a manila folder across the table. He took it without a word. The next morning, I received a calendar invite from Monica Castillo, one of Midpoint's early investors. We hadn't spoken in over a year. When I joined the Zoom call, she was already sipping espresso, arms crossed. Emily, she said flatly. Want to explain why Madeline pitched me your triage model like she came up with it in a dream? I smiled. Did you believe her? I'm insulted you'd even ask. I told her the truth. Not the dramatic version. Just the facts. What they'd taken. How they'd repackaged it. Where it was going. Her face didn't move. But her silence deepened. Then she said, send me what you've got. I'll handle the investor side. I paused. There's more. A lot more. Then send that too. That week, I saw Madeline again, not in person, but in a video clip shared from an internal town hall. She was on stage, answering a question about the upcoming platform rollout. One of the clients asked how the system had been vetted. Madeline smiled and said, we did a thorough review. My team has handled all of it directly. Honestly, the old processes were holding us back. We're finally moving forward. She added, casually, sometimes you have to clear out the clutter to innovate. That line stung. I wasn't clutter. I was the architecture. 2 days later, I returned to Midpoint's building for the first time since I left. Not to go in. Just to observe. Richard exited around noon with 2 junior associates. He was grinning, arms full of branded tote bags for their big event. Madeline followed in a white pantsuit and nude heels, holding her phone up like she was filming her own success story. They looked like royalty. They didn't see me. But someone else did. A former intern, Logan, made eye contact with me from across the street. His brows furrowed. Recognition flickered. I ducked behind the bus stop just in time. Too close. A second later, a message popped up on my old personal account. Logan. Hey, did I just see you downtown? I waited 15 minutes before replying. Me? Nope. Must have been someone else. He didn't write back. That night, I booked a ticket to the upcoming Midpoint Showcase event. It was invite-only, press, investors, and top-tier clients only. But they still used the same registration system I'd implemented 3 years ago. They hadn't updated permissions. I added myself back in as a +1 under Monica Castillo's guest list. No one would question it. I also sent 3 separate email packets. One to Monica, with the documents showing Madeline's fabricated materials. One to Alan, with updated compliance violations. And one to a journalist at the Tribune I knew personally. Subject line, Midpoint's fault line, you'll want to see this before Friday. No threats. No drama. Just truth. And enough rope for Richard and Madeline to hang themselves. 2 days before the event, I bumped into Jordan again, this time outside a sandwich shop near the financial district. He was in a hurry but stopped when he saw me. You've been quiet. I've been working. He nodded. They're prepping a spotlight reel for Madeline. Some big deal about her visionary leadership journey. Makes me sick. I raised an eyebrow. When's it airing? During the keynote. Whole crowd supposed to watch it. Clients. Investors. Even press. I nodded slowly. Then smiled. Enjoy it while it lasts. He looked confused. I mean the celebration, I added, lightly. But you might want to stand near the back. In case things get loud. She toasted her new title with champagne. On stage. Under lights. With cameras rolling. She wore white again, like she wanted the audience to see her as something clean, bright, untouchable. Richard stood beside her, clapping like a proud father. The LED screen behind them glowed with Midpoint's new slogan. Lead forward. And I didn't stop her. Not yet. The room was packed, investors, clients, local press, even some former employees invited as community stakeholders. I'd entered quietly, listed as Monica Castillo's guest. No one looked twice. The Midpoint Showcase had been designed to be a coronation, for Madeline, for Richard, for their next chapter. But coronations only work when the crown fits. 14 minutes into Richard's keynote, it happened. He was pacing confidently, walking through a polished slideshow about agile transformation, when the screen behind him flickered. Then it changed. Not to the next slide. To a PDF. Title. Platform Risk Memo, Emily Harper, Internal Use Only. Date, from my final year at Midpoint. Marked urgent. For a beat, the entire room went still. Then Richard chuckled awkwardly. Looks like we've got a minor tech hiccup. He motioned to someone off stage. The tech didn't move. Because I'd already handed him a signed release. From legal. From Monica. From the board. He was just doing his job. And the document stayed up. I slipped out of my seat and moved toward the side of the ballroom, edging closer to backstage. A security guard clocked me and stepped in front of the curtain. You staff? I nodded once, pulling out my badge, the same one Monica had signed and registered. I'm on cleanup detail, I said softly. For whatever breaks. He gave me a long look, then stepped aside. Next came Madeline. She took the stage smiling, poised, and already speaking before the mic had fully picked up her voice. I'm proud to introduce our next-gen workflow, she said, gesturing grandly toward the screen. The MC method is about streamlining what we know works, and making it smarter. She clicked her remote. The screen shifted to a graphic version of the triage model I'd built from scratch. And then a voice from the crowd rose. Madeline, someone said calmly. Can you speak to when, exactly, you developed this method? It was the logistics VP, the client she'd once lied to. All eyes turned to him. Madeline hesitated. I started shaping the model as part of an internal team. He interrupted. Because I remember being on board with that system a year before you joined the company. A ripple moved through the audience. Before she could recover, Monica stood. Madeline, she said, voice crisp. Were you aware that the original model was created under Emily Harper's name? Someone in the crowd whispered, wait, what? Madeline laughed nervously. Well, I mean, it was a collaborative effort. No, Monica cut in. It wasn't. Then the journalist from the Tribune raised her hand. I've reviewed regulatory reports on the vendor platform you're launching next week. Can you confirm that it still has open compliance violations in 3 states? Madeline paled. Richard stepped forward. That's not public information. Actually, the journalist said, lifting a press badge, it is now. The room turned electric. Phones came out. Cameras turned. Clients whispered to each other in low, urgent tones. One investor stood up. Is this true? Another followed, Polar Files. We'll be re-evaluating. Then the screen behind them changed again. A video, short, simple. It was me. From a year earlier. Giving a midpoint webinar on risk management. Explaining why we rejected that very same vendor. The caption read. Ignored. Replaced. Now heard. And beneath it, my name. Emily Harper. Backstage, I watched Richard run his hands through his hair, sweating. Madeline stared at the screen like it had betrayed her. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. I stepped forward into the wings. For a moment, Madeline looked over and saw me. Her eyes went wide. She didn't blink. She didn't speak. She just saw me. And I let her. That was enough. That evening, I got 3 messages. From Alan Liu. You were right. Regulators already flagged the vendor. Midpoint's going to have to make a statement. Let me know if you want to be involved. From the Tribune reporter. Stories running at 6. Full feature. You're quoted. I hope you're ready. From Monica. They're out. The board backed it. We want you back, not just to fix this, but to lead it. The company's still worth saving. And frankly, so are you. I read the last one twice. My hand shook a little. Not from fear. Not even from joy. Just from the weight of it all finally being real. They hadn't just tried to fire me. They tried to erase me. And now, they were gone, and I was being asked to rebuild the very thing they'd nearly destroyed. I took a deep breath. Typed a reply. Let's talk Monday. If I come back, it's going to be on my terms. And I won't be working in anyone's shadow again. Walking into the office again felt surreal. Same lobby. Same logo. Same coffee scent. But everything felt different. Lighter. I passed the old conference room, the one where Richard had looked me in the eye and said, "It's nothing personal. Just business." And I smiled. Because he was wrong. It had always been personal. People say revenge is about getting even. But this wasn't revenge. It was restoration. Of my name. Of my work. Of my seat at the table. Some people rise by tearing others down. I rose by letting them destroy themselves. All I had to do was tell the truth. And wait for it to echo. They thought they buried me in silence. But all they did was clear the soil. And I came back stronger, with my roots intact, and the whole forest listening.